Hi, my name is Linda Harper. I'm 55 years old, living in Cleveland, Ohio, a city that holds so many memories of both joy and sorrow. I am a widow, and for the past 30 years, I worked as a school cafeteria worker. Every morning, I would prepare meals for children. Seeing their bright faces and laughter would make me feel alive. Life, however, has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. I always thought that by the time we reach our 50s, life slows down, and peace surrounds us. But for me, life had other plans. One tragic event changed everything, and left me questioning who truly stands by you when the world seems to turn its back. My story is one of love, betrayal, and discovering strength I never knew I had. People often say that a mother's love is unconditional, and I had believed in that fully. I had always tried to give my children the best of myself, sacrificing countless nights and personal dreams, just to make sure Michael and Sarah grew up happy and loved. Yet, after my husband passed away, I would realize that even the closest bonds can be tested in ways you never expect. Before I go any further, I want to remind you to watch this video till the end. My story will take you through moments of heartbreak and revelation, and if you stay with me, you'll see a lesson that changed my life forever. And if you find this story touching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It encourages me to share more stories that speak from the heart. I had two wonderful children, Michael, my eldest at 31, and Sarah, my youngest at 29. They were the heartbeat of my home. Our house was never silent. Laughter and conversations filled every corner. I still remember waking up early to make breakfast and seeing Michael grumble sleepily, yet smiling, and Sarah excitedly sharing her day's plans. Those mornings were simple, yet they were precious. After my husband passed away, they became my pillars. I leaned on them not just as a mother, but also as a friend. We had countless movie nights, long talks about dreams and fears, and shared meals that became small celebrations of life amidst the grief we all carried. I thought that after all the years of love and care, our bond would remain unshakable. I always tried to give them guidance without being controlling. Michael, with his quick wit and sometimes stubborn personality, and Sarah, kind-hearted and fiercely protective, each had their own way of navigating life. I respected that, always hoping they would respect my presence and support me when I needed them the most. Life was not perfect, but in those moments, it felt complete. Then came the morning that shattered our world. My husband passed away suddenly, leaving an emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. The house felt colder, quieter, almost lifeless without his presence. The grief was overwhelming, but as a mother, I felt a responsibility to hold myself together. In the days following his death, I tried to comfort my children while silently managing my own heartbreak. Michael would sit quietly, staring at the floor, and Sarah would sometimes cry herself to sleep. I thought that as long as I stayed strong, we could all heal together. I clung to memories, photographs, and the routines we had shared as a family. Yet grief has its own way of revealing the cracks in relationships. I had always assumed that our family bond was unbreakable, but slowly I began to notice subtle shifts. My husband's death had left not just a void of love, but also an unexpected strain on the family dynamic. After my husband's funeral, I hoped my children would step forward to offer emotional support. I imagined moments where Michael would sit with me, sharing memories of his father, and Sarah would hold my hand as we cried together. I needed their presence, their reassurance, their care. But reality unfolded differently. I found myself waiting for them to ask how I was feeling, to include me in their plans, and to lean on me as I had always leaned on them. Instead, I was met with distance, impatience, and a subtle coldness that I could not understand. I kept hoping that it was a temporary phase of grief, that they just needed time to process their own emotions. Over the next few weeks, Michael began to change. He stopped engaging in long conversations, avoided eye contact, and spoke in short, clipped sentences. The warmth that I once felt between us seemed to vanish overnight. Simple questions like, "How was your day?" or "Do you want to eat together?" were met with silence or irritation. At first, I tried to rationalize his behavior. Maybe he was busy, maybe he was overwhelmed by his own grief. But the pattern grew consistent. I realized that his presence was no longer comforting. It was tense, uncomfortable, and increasingly distant. I felt a growing ache in my chest, a premonition that something was wrong. The house that was once filled with laughter now echoed with coldness. Even in the smallest gestures, I felt the absence of the son I had nurtured. And deep inside, a fear began to form. What if the bond I had relied on for decades was slowly breaking beyond repair? The day I had feared in my quiet moments arrived like a storm I hadn't seen coming. It was just after my husband's funeral, and I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I had trusted that Michael, my eldest, would drive me home gently, perhaps even talk a little about his grief or mine. But as soon as we were on the road, something in his tone shifted, a coldness I hadn't encountered before. Without warning, he turned onto a deserted, winding road far from the neighborhood. The trees leaned over like silent sentinels, casting long shadows in the dim afternoon light. The quiet hum of the car engine was the only sound, yet it seemed deafening in the emptiness around us. My heart began to race, an instinctive warning crawling up my spine. Then he stopped the car. I looked at him, expecting him to explain, to say something comforting. But his eyes were hard, his expression indifferent. He said clearly, without any hint of emotion, "This is where you get off, Mom. I can't take care of you anymore." Time froze. My mind screamed, my chest tightened, and tears welled up instantly. I felt as though the ground beneath me had collapsed. The son I had raised, guided, and nurtured was abandoning me, leaving me alone on a road I had never known. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. All I could do was stare at him, searching for a flicker of warmth or regret. But there was none. I remember opening the car door and stepping out. The cold air hit me like a slap, the deserted road stretching endlessly in front of me. Michael drove away, the taillights disappearing, leaving me standing there with nothing but disbelief and a sharp, aching pain in my heart. I felt small, vulnerable, and completely betrayed. As I stood alone, the world seemed to have fallen into silence. The car had disappeared, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. I could hardly comprehend what had just happened. My own son, someone I had sacrificed everything for, someone whose small victories and failures had been my life, had turned his back on me. Confusion ran through my mind like a storm. Was it exhaustion? Was it grief? Or had he always harbored this bitterness, hidden beneath polite smiles? I couldn't understand. I wanted to scream, to shout his name until my throat ached, but only tears came. The betrayal was not just in his words. It was in the deliberate act of abandoning me on that road, showing a disregard I had never imagined. I walked slowly along the asphalt, each step heavy, each breath shallow. Memories of our childhood together flashed through my mind. The scraped knees I had bandaged, the birthdays I had celebrated, the nights I had stayed awake listening to his worries. Had it all meant nothing? The world felt unreal, as though I had stepped into a dream that had turned into a nightmare. The road seemed endless, stretching through a landscape both familiar and hauntingly different. Shadows fell across the asphalt, trees bending like silent witnesses to my humiliation and heartbreak. I clutched my purse tightly, as if it could shield me from the pain or provide some anchor to reality. But nothing did. With each step, my thoughts spun in loops of disbelief. I kept asking myself, why? Why would he do this to me? The betrayal was so deep that it pierced not only my heart, but also my sense of self. I questioned my worth, my place in the world, and my trust in the people I loved most. Yet even in my despair, a tiny spark of determination flickered. I realized that while I could not control my son's actions, I could control my response. The wind picked up, and the late afternoon shadows stretched longer. I kept walking, ignoring the chill that seeped into my bones, driven by an instinct to keep moving forward, even if I had no destination in mind. Each step was a silent declaration that I would not collapse entirely under the weight of betrayal. Just when I felt utterly lost, a familiar voice called out in the distance. It was Sarah, my daughter. She had found me and rushed through the shadows like a guardian angel. Relief flooded me, mingling with lingering shock and tears. She enveloped me in her arms, holding me tightly as if she could shield me from the pain of the world. Through her whispered reassurances, I felt a fragment of hope return. "Mum, I'm here. I won't let him treat you like this. You're not alone," she said. Her presence was a balm to the raw wound left by my son's betrayal. For the first time since Michael's words, I felt safe, grounded, and cared for. Sarah guided me back to her home, offering warmth, tea, and a listening ear. I clung to her words and her presence, realizing that family isn't always about blood alone. It's about the people who choose to stay when others walk away. That day, amidst heartbreak and confusion, I discovered that even in the darkest moments, love can find you in unexpected ways. That night, lying awake in Sarah's guest room, I reflected on the events of the day. The pain of Michael's betrayal was raw, but I understood that succumbing to despair would only allow it to consume me. I made a conscious decision. I would rebuild my life step by step, refusing to let anyone else dictate my worth or my happiness. I realized that dignity and strength come not from avoiding hardships, but from facing them with courage. The next morning, I promised myself that I would find purpose again, that I would seek out connections that uplifted me, and that I would embrace life fully, even if it meant starting over. That night marked the beginning of a journey I never expected, a path where I would discover resilience, love, and hope beyond betrayal. The following week marked the first step in my journey to rebuild my life. I decided to join a local community center program where I could help underprivileged children. The idea initially seemed daunting. I had never imagined myself in this new environment, interacting with strangers who carried struggles very different from my own. Yet, there was a quiet hope inside me that this could be a place to find purpose and healing. Walking into the community center for the first time, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Children of various ages were running around, their laughter echoing in the high-ceilinged hallways. I was assigned to the kitchen at first, preparing meals and snacks for the kids. It was familiar work, yet the context felt profoundly different. Each plate I served felt like a small offering of love and care, a way to rebuild the sense of family I had lost. Slowly, I began connecting with the children. Their curiosity and warmth made me realize that love isn't confined to biological bonds. A small boy named Jason asked me why I looked sad one day, and without thinking, I shared a tiny piece of my story. His innocent empathy and the simple, heartfelt words of encouragement from the other kids filled me with an unexpected sense of belonging. For the first time since Michael's betrayal, I felt needed, appreciated, and genuinely alive again. Over the next few months, these children became more than just faces in a community program. They became my family. They called me Grandma Linda, hugged me tightly, and celebrated small victories with me. I attended birthday parties, helped with homework, and listened to their dreams and worries. Every interaction reminded me that love could be found even in unexpected places. The relationships I formed went beyond simple care. These children, who had lost so much themselves, gave me a sense of purpose and joy. I realized that family is not just about bloodlines, but about who shows up when life turns cruel and difficult. I laughed again, felt pride, and discovered resilience I hadn't known existed. Through them, I could channel the grief and betrayal into acts of kindness that nurtured both me and those around me. Word of my involvement began to spread through the community. Neighbors, local organizations, and even media outlets reached out to share my story. People admired the transformation. A woman abandoned by her own son, finding strength and purpose by helping others. Their recognition was not what I sought, but it affirmed that perseverance, courage, and love could overcome even the deepest heartbreak. I began mentoring new volunteers, sharing my experience of loss, betrayal, and recovery. My life had shifted from despair to empowerment, and the emotional wounds left by Michael's actions began to heal. The admiration from people I had never met also reminded me that validation can come from unexpected places, and that sometimes the family you choose can be more meaningful than the one you're born into. From this journey, I learned a truth that forever changed my perspective. Family isn't always blood. True love and support come from those who stand by you when everyone else walks away. Michael's betrayal was devastating, but it pushed me to find love and purpose elsewhere. Life taught me that strength is built in the moments when you choose to rise despite pain, and that dignity comes from self-respect rather than seeking it from those who fail you. I also discovered that healing requires action. Waiting for reconciliation or validation from someone who abandoned you can trap you in grief, but seeking meaningful connections and helping others can heal wounds and rebuild confidence. My story is proof that even when betrayal cuts deep, life can still offer unexpected, fulfilling relationships that restore hope and joy. If my story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their worth is not defined by those who walk away, but by the love, kindness, and courage they carry within themselves. Life can be harsh, and betrayal can hurt deeply, but it is possible to find purpose, family, and strength even in the most unexpected places.